Hello, ventriloquist Daniel D here. Now, a number of people have asked me how to become a ventriloquist, so I thought it'd be a great idea to put a little series of videos together to help you do just that. There's a number of areas that I think are important to cover. The first one, of course, is how to speak without moving your lips. That's kind of what people think ventriloquism is. That's the most obvious thing. But there are another number of things as well that I think it's important to cover. Obviously, when you're a ventriloquist, you usually have somebody beside you, a puppet. I've got mine down there, but don't tell him because he gets a bit jealous. But you have a puppet and he's the one that does the talking. And that, to be honest with you, that's what makes it easy. Train your puppet, he does the work, and you just stand there doing nothing. At least that's what Hadley tells me. So, your puppet is important. Another thing, though, related to that, is how you make your puppet come to life. And that's the big secret. And that's not just to do with ventriloquism. That's also in relation to general puppetry. How do you make your puppet into a real character, a real person, if you like? So we'll cover that as well. And there are various aspects to that. The mouth movement, or we call that synchronization. But not just synchronization. You have to lip sync the puppet's mouth to what you're saying. But there are also other aspects to synchronization as well. How you interact with each other. And that's really important. There are also other movements that the puppet might do. And we'll look at these in more detail too. Where he looks, how he interacts with you, what he does when he's not talking, and that's a real key issue, because just like any acting situation or performing situation, if you're not doing something, if you're not speaking, then you need to be doing something. If you're not doing something, it looks very wooden and very boring. And your puppet is really, as a ventriloquist, the character that's interacting with the audience. In fact, you'll find, if you don't know this already, that sometimes you'll go to a venue where people know you and the first thing they say to you is, "Oh, how's Hadley?" Not "how's me?" Nobody cares about me. They want to know how Hadley is. Hadley is a puppet. But the way that your character behaves, how he interacts with the audience, is really important. And of course, your character is a whole body when you're a ventriloquist. Puppetry can take many forms, and sometimes puppets perform behind a theatre screen, and you can only see the top part. You can't see the puppeteer. Now that means that the puppet still needs to interact with the audience, but there's no interaction with the puppeteer that's obvious. Sometimes puppeteers are out in the open. I have a puppet theatre close to me. And that's often the case there, that the puppeteer is visible alongside the puppet. And that can be quite difficult sometimes to create a distance between the puppeteer and the puppet. In fact, I took my children there when they were quite young. We go there quite a bit, but I took them there when they were quite young. And after about half an hour of a play where there were various types of puppets, my son, who was about 4 or 5 at the time, looked at me with a confused look on his face. He said, "Daddy, when are the puppets going to come on?" Because the puppeteers were visible all the time, and the problem was that he didn't understand that the puppets that they were using, although they just looked like dolls, to the puppeteers' minds, they were puppets too. And another really vital aspect of puppetry of any sort, not just ventriloquism, but particularly ventriloquism, is your puppet's character. What kind of person is he? What does he do? I'm saying he, but I use female puppets as well, and I use animal puppets. So what kind of personality do they have, and why do they have that personality? We call this a backstory. What's a backstory to your character? And if you have quite a comprehensive backstory, then that character becomes a real person. If it's just a puppet, it doesn't mean anything. But for example, my Hadley is a schoolboy. He gets into trouble sometimes at school. He's cheeky with me. He likes to put me down. And there's a reason for that. It's because he feels like he needs to be more important than me. And sometimes he will tell me that he doesn't really need me. And we have a discussion about that. So those are the main aspects. Let's learn how to talk. let's learn how to use our puppet, let's learn how to interact with our puppet, let's give our puppet personality, and then, of course, we need scripts and we need to work on those scripts. So I'll try and give you a few hints and tips about how to do that as well. How to use scripts, how to even write scripts. I personally write all my own scripts. And how to develop those into basically what is a dialogue. One of the important things I think to remember when you're a ventriloquist is that you're not a solo performer. Yes, it's you, and as somebody once said, you in a suitcase. That's absolutely right. A few extra props as well. But you're not a solo performer. Actually, you're a double act. And one of the strange things about using puppets, whether it's behind a theatre screen or whether it's with a vent puppet, is that over time your puppet develops his own personality, and even you as the puppeteer, as the ventriloquist, starts to believe in your puppet's personality. And in actual fact, the strangest thing is when your puppet actually ad-libs in a scene. It's quite spooky. I remember recording a video one time for a client, and when I record videos for clients, I always record them, sometimes do several takes, record them, do the takes, and play them back immediately to make sure everything looks good. And I remember doing this one time, and I recorded it, everything was fine, I was quite happy, but just before I played it back I thought, yeah, I need to just check that, because I'm sure Hadley and I were speaking at the same time. Actually, it may not surprise you, but we weren't. But because I'd had that relationship with Hadley, I felt as though he'd actually interrupted me and butted in on my conversation, my part of the conversation. And that's what I want you to develop. Learn the technical skills of speaking without moving your mouth. Learn the technical skills of being a puppeteer, and that's a skill in itself. Combine those together, marry them together so they're working together, then work on scripts. And actually, over time, as I've said, what happens then is that scripts almost write themselves. Not totally, and I'm not saying ad-lib on stage for a minute, but what happens is the relationship you have with your puppet enables you to develop scripts together. And again, I'll give you an example of that. I had to do a very short slot for a charity I do a lot of work with, and just literally a 5-10 minute slot, and I didn't have a clue what I was going to talk about. It had to be around a certain subject for the charity, but I didn't know what to talk about, and I thought, I know, I'll get Hadley out and we'll do it together. I talk and he writes it down, obviously. but what we did was I set him up as though we were performing, and I started a conversation, and he filled in the gaps, and then I jotted it down so I could remember it. And of course he needs to remember his parts too, but it's quite amazing that as you develop a relationship with your puppet, he starts to work with you, and that's very hard to explain until you do it, but you'll find that as you talk to ventriloquists, all of them will say that your puppet's personality helps you to write scripts that you're going to use. His humour might be different to yours. His character and personality should be different to yours. And that helps to develop your character, and it helps to develop the relationship between them. But as I say, when your puppet starts to write the scripts for you and with you, it's even better. So the final thing I want to just mention here is voice. Now, we're going to talk a lot about voice, obviously, because voice is kind of important when you're doing ventriloquism. But one of the keys with voice is that your puppet should have a different voice to you, and that's really important. And I've watched ventriloquists, amateur mainly, and I'm sure you have, where the puppet character has a very similar voice to the puppeteer, and the problem with that is you can't always distinguish between the two, and that's so key. And there are times when I'm performing, and actually when I perform with Hadley, my own voice is much clearer than I would normally speak to you if I was having a conversation with you or anyone else. My voice is much clearer, my mouth movements are more pronounced, and that's to enable the illusion to be more apparent. because normally I'm a bit of a lazy, like many of us, I'm a bit of a lazy speaker, and I won't bother to open my mouth very much, and I'll slur my speech, and it doesn't matter because we make sense of that. But when I'm performing with my puppet, what I do is I move my mouth quite a lot, so it's more apparent, and that means that when I stop moving my mouth to enable my puppet characters to speak, the focus is drawn to them and their movements are more apparent than mine. And actually, if you watch even the best ventriloquists, if you just focus on their own mouths, you will occasionally see some slight movement, but it doesn't matter. What we're creating isn't perfection, and this is a really key point. What we're creating is an illusion, the illusion that your puppet is talking. And anybody that goes to any ventriloquist show or presentation or performance at all knows that the puppet does not talk. They know that it's the ventriloquist, the puppeteer, who's doing the talking. But why is it fascinating? Why do people want to go? Because they love the illusion. They love to see the puppet talking. And even as a ventriloquist yourself, what you find is that you yourself focus on the puppet's mouth, the puppet's performance, because that's the important thing to you. And again, when I record videos, I will watch the video straight back once I've recorded it, and I find that what I'm doing is looking at Hadley and not my own mouth. And it's really strange, because one of the things that I recommend to you, and we'll talk again more about this, is to practice in front of a mirror. Practice by yourself in front of a mirror. And the reason I'm saying that is that as soon as you introduce a puppet, you focus on him. So when you're looking at the mirror, you're looking at the puppet. Now, there's a reason I think that most of us do that. We don't like looking at ourselves in the mirror. And especially on video, you record a video of yourself, you really don't want to watch yourself on a video. I mean, listen to your voice. Nobody wants to listen to themselves. You get used to that, don't worry. And in fact, the more videos you can do of yourself, these days it's so easy to record videos of yourself. Watch them, make yourself watch them, because after a while it becomes very simple, very, very comfortable to listen to yourself. To begin with, it's uncomfortable. But what you've got to do is, as I say, focus on your own mouth, your own performance. And the more comfortable you get with that, the more you will develop your ability. Then introduce a puppet. Once you can talk without moving your mouth, the puppet will do that. And then we move on to lip sync. So those are a few key points I want to cover. And if there's anything else you want to know, just leave me a comment, ask a question, get in touch with me, and we can cover other areas. Oh, maybe just one additional thing. Occasionally, and I do this, and you'll see a lot of events do this, but occasionally it's great to use more than one puppet character. I've done songs with two, a girl and a boy. I use a puppet and a vent mask. I'll use two vent masks. And again, you know, the differentiation between the two voices in those situations is really important. Yes, we were talking about illusion. Let's just go back and finish that segment just for a second. The illusion is that the puppet is doing the talking. Everybody knows that it's you talking. But what we find, the illusion works because what we find is people look at the character that's talking. And they don't even look at the mouth. When you're looking at your friend, when you're talking to a friend or anybody, a work colleague, whoever it might be, you don't look at the person's mouth, you look at their eyes. So that's what you've got to do with your puppet. People will focus on the puppet. So it doesn't actually matter if you make slight mistakes or if your mouth isn't perfect, it still works. And that's why we need to work on the other aspects of ventriloquism, the performance side, the interaction between you and the puppet, the interaction between the puppet and the audience, which is really key. I have one of my mentors, I'm not in touch with her anymore, a wonderful lady called Judy Bush, and she's an American ventriloquist, very, very professional, very successful. In fact, she works a lot in the corporate world. She does training programs for corporate bodies and businesses using her puppet characters. And I've watched her a lot on video, and she gave me lots of tips and performance tips and lots of encouragement. But one of the things I noticed with her was if I focus purely on her mouth, I will see tiny movements. But her puppet characters are so mobile and so engaging that, of course, my interaction, my focus is naturally on them. So that's what we're doing. We're creating the illusion of a puppet talking. We're doing the talking, so we've got to work hard on that. And we've got to build a belief in the audience that the puppet is a character in their own right. So I'll see you in the next video, where we'll start to talk about how to say those letters with our mouth without moving our mouth. I'll see you shortly.